those who saw the newer version of Sherlock Holmes, you're probably going to agree with me that this is a fantastic movie. However, the studio totally plucked up the characters up so bad that I was embarrassed not to recommend it. At first, I was excited when I heard that they are making a movie based off the Sherlock Holmes book series by son Conan Doyle, but after I watched the trailer, I was highly disappointed by the way they made the main characters up by their personalities. They took some of it from the book and made the rest up. Whether you like it or not, this movie does not tribute or relate it to any of the classic series in any order, and what I mean by that is the way they present to the characters and the main story plot. In order you to understand, you need to compare the differences between the original movie series and the updated version of Sherlock Holmes. Back in the day, they made like short movie films of Sherlock Holmes based on the books by Sir Conan Doyle, and the way they made the film, they made it like almost directly from the book, from the aspects to the suspense of the drama. It keeps you guessing who's the prime suspect in each crime, and it gets very serious all the way. The soundtrack is quite chilling as you feel the intense drama every step of the way. That movie has none of that. Instead of making the story plot very funny with my humor, which is totally off the books. Allow me to review these classic movies along with the Steven Spielberg versions. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Of all the different versions of the mystery, this classic brought the book out of life, following strips of detail from the very beginning. I have read the book, so I know what to expect. This brings Holmes and Watson to one of the most devious adventures of the cases that drew the audience to their true fame than the latest version. A butler is murdered by the canine, extracting the family curse to all its relatives, targeting the son. Holmes goes deep undercover, all wrapping the foils of the killer and preventing him from setting dangers against the son and his marriage. Minute by minute, the clues adjust the pieces in order as the story advances, grabbing the audience on their seats. No spoilers are needed, but it sinks you in each of the characters' mind and makes you think, who are they?
Two little points, Holmes, and I can't for the life of me reconcile with your theory about that poor demented convict.
One or two little points?
But surely you can't mean that he was in London 3 weeks ago? Sent that letter? Stole that boot?
Of course not.
And who the devil did?
The same person who was responsible for the death of that convict last night and will try again to murder Sir Henry tonight.
Tonight?
Unless my imagination has run away with itself, and I don't think that it has.
Then why are we rushing up to London, leaving Sir Henry entirely unprotected?
We're not, my dear Watson. We're just giving the impression of rushing up to London. In a minute and a half, we'll be in Oakhampton. There, we'll catch a train back to Dartmoor. If my surmise is correct, we'll nab our man in the act.
But if you know who it is, why all this roundabout rigmarole? Why don't you have him arrested?
Because I've no case. Not a shred of evidence that would hold in any court. The only way is to catch him red-handed, to catch him in such a way that there's no escape, no alibi. That means gambling with Sir Henry's life.
But you can't
Gambling to save his life. But we've got to take that chance. Otherwise, the shadow of sudden death will be forever hanging over his head, and sooner or later... Here we are, Oakhampton.
You could tell he's very convincing and clever of the killer's moves. He is a noble gentleman who likes to smoke his pipe and play the violin. The woman in green shows a very deep proportion that features his legendary arch-nemesis Professor Moriarty and his noblest studies. He uses a woman who you do not see her in green though, because it's in black and white, to hypnotize his victims for murder. Now that I recommend a reboot, because you do not see the human female Holmes mention that they sliced the woman, but it's a bit more charming when you get to see him under his spell. I was thinking that morality has been given such advantage through the end, but we suddenly woke up from that deep suspense and begging for more. Tons. Now for the Spielberg version. Young Sherlock Holmes. Ever wonder how the partners met? Well, these filmmakers really got an idea and made it up themselves, still close to each of the settings and characters' personality, which made it fun to watch, even with adding a bit comedy throughout. They made it in a way that you can reflect to the beginning of how Holmes became a genius that no one ever imagined, tipping it off with the famous detective plotline and quotes we have remembered. They even announced that the author wrote how they met in the beginning, that it was all creative. So I gave them full credit. Because the newer version just released on DVD, I'm not showing any clips from it to prevent it from copyright claim. So be aware that this movie is a mockery and certain parts of the movie to original where you go watch it after you win it or buy it. Compared to the original Sherlock Holmes versions, the two partners are awfully young. Holmes is just acting like a douchebag, taking women off and asking some personal questions about Washington's fiancée, and he gets very irritated and requests this from some space. But no, Sherlock Holmes has to be persistent and make him feel very uncomfortable. Never respect his boundaries, although Watson truly respects him as a partner and a friend. Getting caught up in martial arts and possibly get strip-related, being clever at disguising himself and finding clues, doesn't fit him enough to be a normal gentleman. He doesn't even play the violin properly. Just two strings he only plays that the only one or two scenes where he usually plays the violin more often. They never use the tag phrase "elementally, my dear Watson," nor the trademark clothesline, which really appeals to me. I cannot understand that they wanted to upgrade it and change it to like much more realistically, but Holmes would never what a detective have that we used to remember back in the old days. And they usually constantly use the same gesture sometimes. But the good side of it is, they never split. They never separated sometimes, but most of the time, and they always work together. Above all, the movie was good, but I really don't recommend it like as like the best movie or for the Academy Award or so forth. But the soundtrack was very awesome, and I'm glad the rest of the characters besides the chief and made Sherlock Holmes are all made up. One bad side is there's no professional morality, which is the main villain of the series, and the movie itself is set up for a sequel. I just hope they will make this one very, very better than the first one. Just not make sure it won't be more boring, unlike the other movies though, because he's the only main villain. I didn't draw my attention enough to be anxious of the next move, although the flashbacks of Sherlock Holmes' strategies of how it happened were very mind-blowing. The actions were very quick but very poorly balanced. It's not giving me an impression to get in the game. Certain materials can't beat the original, but are very well upgraded. The ending credits were very cool, so I give it 4 out of 5 because it twisted the main characters way up and made it fall to the original Sherlock Holmes. There are other types of detective shows and movie versions of the original Sherlock Holmes series, but the original will always stands in as an instant classic by its name from the Thriller novel series.